Welcome back to Murder in the Black. It is your host, Steph. Let's go ahead and jump into our true crime case for today. Grab your coffee if it's the morning, your lemonade if it's the afternoon, but most certainly grab your wine if it's the evening. Either way, let's jump into it. Every city has its secrets. In Dallas, the shadows seem to stretch a little longer, the silence between confessions thick with unanswered questions. And this week's true crime story unravels in Mesquite and Carrollton, Texas. Both are seemingly ordinary suburbs, but they turn into a setting for a cautionary tale this week that pierces the heart of every parent's deepest fears. In this digital age where the internet is both a lifeline, it can sometimes be dangerous. And danger arrives not with a knock at the door, but with a notification on your screen. Now, our victim today is young, but her story carries weight for anyone who's ever trusted what they saw or heard online. I want to issue a trigger warning before we get into our true crime case. If you are particularly sensitive to child murder, this is not the case for you. I want you to circle back with us next Thursday. Let's step back to 2012. And the air is humming with the buzz of smartphones, and teens have their eyes glued to their phones watching social media. And Mesquite and Carrollton are a place where many people feel safe. And let's just put it out there. Those places are no different than the cities that you've decided to raise your families in. We often believe that our suburbs or cities are where children can play outside in fear of no strangers talking to them, and neighbors can nod to one another in passing. But beneath the veneer of comfort, we have to admit that far too often the cities that we live in have something darker brewing beneath them. And in the cities of Mesquite and Carrollton, a lesson was waiting to be learned, unfortunately, at the cost of innocence. Shania Gray was 16 years old in 2012. She recently moved with her mother, brother, and stepfather from Mesquite to nearby Carrollton, Texas. Shania was preparing to begin her junior year at Hebron High School. Now, to say that Shania was an All-American girl probably is an understatement, but is the best way to describe the type of person she was. She participated in choir, she maintained honor roll status, she played basketball, and competed in track events. Shania was that girl. She was responsible, she helped to care for her brother who had autism, but she was very ordinary in a lot of ways as well. Like many teenagers, she enjoyed social media, particularly Facebook, where she often interacted with friends that she knew personally, but also friends that she met when she competed in various track events around the city of Dallas and also outside of the state. Now, her mother regularly monitored Shania's online presence by reviewing her friends list each month. For instance, they would pull up Facebook and go through her friends list, and her mother would say, "Do you know this person? Do you know this person? Do you know them in real life? Have you met them?" And sometimes Shania would say yes, and other times she would say no. And if it was no, then her mother would have Shania delete that person off her friends list. Shania friends list expanded, it became more challenging to oversee all of her connections. And she got introduced by way of friend request to a man named David. Now, this was a young man. He recently graduated from high school and was a recruit to the Army. And after he asked to be your friend, they quickly swapped messages back and forth before exchanging numbers to have a more intimate conversation. And Shania, before long, found herself confiding in D about a myriad of topics. But one thing she told him about that was pertinent was her recent move from Mesquite to Carrollton. When she was 14 years old, Shania would babysit for her mother's friend. Her mother's friend's name was Jennifer, and she had a 6-year-old daughter. And many times when Jennifer was working late or had a late shift, Shania would stay over. She would just spend the night and go home in the morning. On one of these occasions, however, she met Jennifer's baby father, Franklin Wish Davis. It wasn't out of the ordinary that he popped by on this occasion. But what made this occasion different was the fact that Shania claimed that he made a pass at her, saying things like, "Oh, you're 14, you sure are beautiful. I sure would like to talk to you." He was 28 years old. An inappropriate statement to make to a 14-year-old girl. Unaware of how to navigate the situation, she became very awkward and excused herself to the bathroom. And she continued to babysit after this interaction. But every time she would see Franklin, he continued to be inappropriate with her. And she was unsure of what to make of them. She didn't tell anybody about what happened initially. That was until she hinted to a friend what took place during these several occasions that she interacted with Franklin. And she told her friend that he was doing things to her, but she never said exactly what it was. Shania's friend was also 14, unaware of how to navigate the situation. And because Shania wasn't specific, and also because she was 14, she just felt like Shania would be able to navigate the situation on her own. Like somehow Shania would be able to filter through that situation and get out of an uncomfortable situation with Jennifer's baby's father. I want to spend a little bit of time on before we continue with our story is talking about how often molestation and sexual assault occurs with teenagers. There may be parents listening, also young teens who are listening, and there's an inappropriate situation that you're currently experiencing, but you're not sure about how to navigate it. Well, I want to provide to you guys some statistics. And from those statistics, then we'll talk about how we can create safe spaces in order for our teens to feel comfortable enough to talk to us. Now, I want to preface this by saying that there is no definitive number when it comes to sexual assault and molestation numbers and that we often talk about. And that's because most sexual assault victims don't self-report. Estimates indicate that between 40% to 60% of all rape victims are under the age of 18, with most being adolescents. It is estimated that 2/3 of minors who have experienced sexual abuse were between 12 and 17 years old when it first occurred. So that lets us know this is not a question on if it's happening. It's definitely happening within this demographic. But how can we help them navigate this very important situation that can occur? There are 3 factors that we should consider. The first one is to initiate and maintain open communication. And this is easily done if you're a friend, right? Like Shania was with her friend. She already knew that she could have open communication with her friend. She felt like her friend was trustworthy and she felt comfortable enough to express it. And the first factor that I just said, the initiate and maintain open communication, that can be somewhat difficult for parents and guardians, or maybe even somebody that you trust, a family friend. You feel like it's an awkward moment. They're in adolescence. They're trying to develop who they are. How do I confront and talk to them about something so important like sexual assault? While that is an important topic, it's very important to just have open communication with them, period, amongst all topics. So they know they can come and talk to you about whatever and whenever. If they're open enough to come and talk to you about the small things in their life, they're more inclined to talk to you about the big things. And that's why it's so easy for them to talk to their peers, right? Because that's already there. And that's established in their childhood, to be honest with you, but that also can be built over time in their adolescence as well. To have that safe space curated towards them and their needs and their personality is especially important. The second factor is to create a trusting environment. That is for you not to react once they are able to reveal something to you, to react by yelling or anger, to be very calm in your approach when dealing with various topics, but especially a topic as heavy as sexual assault. And the third and final topic is to equip them with response strategies. When an inappropriate situation occurs, to teach them what that response should be. And although that's awkward, it's important because we can see here with Shania that she didn't know what to do. And her first response was to flee the situation. And we don't know if this was the case for Shania, but speaking in broader terms, if equipped in that same situation to say, yes, flee that situation and immediately call me to come get you if a situation like that occurs and you feel uncomfortable, and then let me know. One, so I can come rescue you from the said situation, and then let me help you navigate that situation once you're out of it. Equipping our teens with a curated safe space of open communication, one where they feel like they can trust you, and then to create scenarios that may occur in a situation like sexual assault. How does that grooming process begin? Things like that are so important when we're talking about how can we protect our youth. And if you are a friend, if you're a teen and your friend approaches you and tells you that this particular situation is going on with them, whether they were as vague as Shania was or they're very specific, the best thing that you can do is to listen to them and encourage them to tell their parent. And sometimes you have to do something harder where they say, I'm not telling my parent. Sometimes you have to be the one to tell their parent because as hard as that is, it's best practices to go ahead and tell their parent with the assistance of your parent. Now that we have that out the way, I think that's an important part to stop and talk about. Let's get back to our story. Now, in retrospect, Shania's friend wished that she would have spoke up and told Shania to tell her mother. But it's important to note, Shania simply did not give her explicit details, and she was young herself. There's no blame for her friend there. Eventually, though, Shania ended up giving up that babysitting job. But Franklin continued to contact her. And it was on one occasion when Shania was at home enjoying TV with her mother that Shania received a text message late at night. And her mother happened to be the closest person to the phone. So naturally, she grabs Shania's phone and sees the first message. And it's from Wish, who Shania's mother knew that was the nickname of Franklin, her friend's baby's father. The first message that comes across Shania's screen was, "Why haven't you been coming over?" Question mark. And the one that followed up next cleared up any doubt that this could be friendly at all. He said, "I want you, but I can't have you right now." Her mother was immediately floored by the text messages, and she was furious. And initially, she asked Shania what was going on with Franklin and had he done something to her. But Shania shut down immediately. She was upset and dismissive. But the very next day, Shania ended up revealing to her mother the full story. That it wasn't as vague as she told her friend. Franklin raped her, and it was 4 occasions that this took place. Now, immediately, Shania's mother, Sherry, reported the rape, and by spring of 2011, Shania and Sherry met with local detectives. Shania detailed the 4 separate occasions in which the rape occurred. The messages that her mother found were pertinent to the investigation, and what held Shania from coming forward from the beginning was that he threatened the life of her family. And she was just afraid to tell. She thought she was protecting them by not coming forward. And it's a tactic used by pedophiles over the years to instill fear in the children so that they never come forward. Franklin Davis was charged with 4 counts of sexual assault, and he was refused bond pending trial. A year passed, and the case was still stuck in limbo. He was still locked up, and there was no set trial. This was the very thing that Shania confided in Dee about, and he became an emotional comfort for her during the time that she was dealing with the aftermath of the Franklin situation. According to Shania's mother, they moved to get Shania out of that environment and just give her a new start. And although it was an adjustment and she was going through therapy and trying to get her life back on course, Shania was getting her confidence back and she was enrolled at Hebron High School. Now, on the second day of school, which was September 6th of 2012, her mother planned to pick Shania up after tutoring. And she spoke with Shania very briefly and told Shania to come straight down after she finished tutoring at 4:15 because they had choir rehearsal immediately following. Shania told her mom, "Rest assured, mom, I'll be there, no problem," and gets off the phone and heads to physics tutoring. Shania was due to be out of tutoring by 4:15, as I just said, but 20 minutes came and went. And Shania's mother, Sherry, was concerned. So she simply texted Shania thinking that maybe she went a couple of minutes over during her tutoring. But Shania didn't text back, which was unusual. She allowed some more time to go by. But before she knew it, they were approaching the hour and they were going to be late for choir rehearsals. She opted to get out of her car and go into the school. She was going to find her in the classroom and get her so they could leave. But as she approached the physics classroom where Shania was supposed to be, the room was dark, and she ran into the physics teacher where she inquired about Shania's whereabouts. The physics teacher said that Shania did come to tutoring, but she promptly left around 4:15. Sherry was frantic, and she began talking to multiple administrators and teachers on campus who tried to reassure her that maybe you're overreacting. Just maybe, being a teenager. Shania decided to catch a ride with a friend, and she just didn't tell you, but she'll be at home soon. But Sherry was adamant. Shania would never do anything like that. Shania was responsible. She would, at the very least, tell her what she was going to do, even if it was a change of plans. Sherry, frantic, left with nothing else to do but to try to go home and see if Shania beat her there, decides to leave and talk it over with her husband, Dwayne. But Shania doesn't text, she doesn't call, and they check social media and she hasn't posted. So they do the next best thing. They go back to the school and they drive around the neighborhood. But by this time, it's dark and not much progress is made at all. And they eventually go back home. Her parents, they searched all night and they didn't come up with anything. By September 7th of 2012, which was a Friday, his parents returned to the school in the morning, and with administrators and teachers, they reviewed the footage from the previous day. And it showed Shania exiting through a back door of the school around 4:15 after she got out of tutoring. She appeared to be somewhat hesitant, just in her facial expressions, according to her mother, but otherwise, she seemed fine. Investigators, once made aware of Shania's disappearance, they initially went pretty hard on Sherry and Dwayne. They asked, of course, the burning question, why didn't you call us earlier? But according to Sherry and Dwayne, they tried and they were told to wait. So they began to ask more questions, and they even outright accused Dwayne of killing Shania. And Dwayne adamantly said he had nothing to do with what happened to Shania and he wanted to find her. He loved her. He would never do anything to harm her. Now, it was later revealed that their initial suspicions were unfounded, and really it was proved to be unfounded because they found out that same day that Franklin had been released on bond 3 months prior to the disappearance of Shania. And the family was not made aware at all of this development because it would have changed how they moved. And they really thought that their daughter was in danger. To be transparent, the investigators had no idea until Shania's mother and stepfather mentioned the rape case and the fact that this man was now out on bail, and they just found out today that he was out on bail. They were completely unaware of this pertinent information about Franklin. Now equipped with this information, they really felt like Franklin was their suspect. Investigators made their way into discovering where Franklin lived. They did not have his current address on file. During the process, they reviewed Shania's call records, and they found two unidentified numbers beginning with 903. The first number was traced and eliminated as a lead, and the second unidentified number, they were able to make out that it was a burner phone. And we know that anyone who's using a burner phone wants to be untraceable. They don't want to be contacted. They found out that the burner phone reached out to phone number 2. Now, the reason why I'm using this terminology is because I'm unsure on how they were able to compare the burner phone, Shania's phone records, to this phone number 2. I just don't understand how they got there. And that's where this story somewhat differs in information, because the first information that I got about this particular number was that it was simply just traced back to Franklin. However, the second information tends to try to explain how it was traced back to Franklin, although it's still extremely murky, because how did you compare burner phone to Shania's phone to phone number 2? But you guys know I like to tell you when things differ, and I try to explain as best as I can with the information that's out there how police were able to conduct their investigation. So, with phone number 2, they reached out to the number because they knew that the burner phone had called them. They called phone number 2, and a woman picks up the phone, and her name is Joanna. Joanna says that she has no idea who the last 4 digits were of this 903 number, which is identified as the burner phone. But she mentions while on the phone that her husband may know. Her husband's name was Franklin Davis. She says, just a moment, I'm about to get him on the phone. Investigators who are already looking for Franklin Davis realizes this is him, the same Franklin Davis. They're speaking to exactly who they want. They inquire, do you know this 903 number ending in the last 4 digits? And he says no. They go on to ask him, does he know Shania? And he says yes, but I haven't had any contact with her. I don't know anything about it. And they're trying to conduct somewhat of an interview on the phone informally because they weren't expecting to talk to him in the first place. But he immediately shoos them away. Now, what investigators do from the beginning is that they send some detectives in an unmarked car and not dressed up in police gear to Joanna's apartment. Now, they didn't know at the time that Joanna was married to Franklin, but they're observing Joanna's apartment as the police end up getting off the call with them. After the call, 2 police officers in an unmarked car then observe Franklin come outside. Now they're made aware that Franklin was the person they wanted to speak with in the first place, and they see Franklin coming out with a garbage bag. They're scared that Franklin may be getting rid of evidence, and so they just take him in at that point. Now, when Franklin's sitting down talking to investigators, he tells them, what is this about? They let him know that Shania is missing, and they inquire if he has anything to do with her disappearance, especially because he has pending rape charges that are dependent on her testimony. And he says, no, I don't have any knowledge of her disappearance, but what I do have is text messages from Shania. She says that her mother made her file the charges and I didn't do anything to her. And this is what y'all need to be investigating. The head investigator says, okay, yeah, we'll look at that. But my main concern is finding out who this burner phone belongs to. And they find out that he has additional traffic charges from a different county. They take him into custody. Detectives, as I said previously, plan to evaluate the text in Franklin's phone. But they had to figure out where Shania was. That was more important to them. With the cooperation of Joanna, they brought down Franklin's car. And they questioned Joanna about the day Shania disappeared. Asked her, what was she doing on September 6th? And she claimed that she went to work that day and Franklin took the car. She said that when Franklin picked her up from work, he seemed to be calm, but she noticed that the car smelled of cologne, and she didn't quite know why. She also mentioned that he seemed to be overly affectionate. They took a bath together, and then they were intimate that night. But other than that, nothing else seemed to be off with Franklin. She agreed to bring down Franklin's cars to the station so that they could be searched. They do an initial search of the 2 vehicles that were brought down, and nothing comes back. They search Franklin's cars using a cadaver dog. There was no reaction to his first car, but his white sedan got a hit. Police went to Franklin with that evidence and they said, you might want to tell us where Shania is. We know she was in your car. We know that you killed her. Where is she? He simply said that he had no motive to kill her, that he didn't know what they were talking about, and he wasn't going to speak. And it's at this point that detectives decide to look at those text messages that he said were from Shania. And sure enough, the text messages seemed to be consistent and verified. Investigators really didn't know what to think about this scenario. They knew that the cadaver dog got a hit. They also are now looking at these text messages and are seeing that it appears that Shania lied at the behest of her mother. They didn't know what to believe, but they knew that something was wrong. And soon after, investigators got a call that they found a body in the Trinity River close to Shania's school. They got that hit from that cadaver dog, and now hearing the news of a body found in the Trinity River, they really felt this was Shania, but they didn't know. As they received more details about the body found in the Trinity River, they felt it was her because the clothes that the body had on matched the clothes that Shania was last seen wearing. Tragically, they did get a positive ID that the body was that of 16-year-old Shania Gray. When her mother got the news, she was shocked, and all the other adjectives that you can think of to describe a mother, a family losing their beloved daughter at the age of 16 years old, murdered, in fact. But the family was committed to seeking justice. Next to Shania's body, they did recover her cell phone, and it was there that they were able to piece together the day that she disappeared. Shania did speak to her mother and go to tutoring with plans of meeting her mother after. However, they discovered text messages between her and her online friend, Dee. And Dee claimed that he was going to come to her school that day and she should meet him in the parking lot just for a brief talk so they could meet. This was someone she had a crush on, and she just wanted to move it from talking on the phone to meeting in person. And she thought, what harm could come from meeting him in the parking lot at her school? At 4:15, she headed down to the parking lot, leaving out of the back door. Detectives, now having the body of Shania and having that positive ID, go to Franklin's and corner him. Say, what happened? You might as well just give it up, you scum of the earth. And this is when he admits that he posed as his cousin online named D. He got on his account, lured Shania in by asking her for a friend request. When she didn't accept another profile that he created, he then used his cousins to lure her into conversations and then eventually got her to exchange numbers. He was able to cloak his voice so that she didn't know it was him. And once she was unable to identify who he was, he felt fully emboldened to carry on this relationship with her. They did track his cell phone, and it revealed that he was at her school that afternoon, and it placed them together. He claimed that he approached Shania in the parking lot, and he said that he didn't force her into the car, but he did use his gun. Clearly, he forced her in the car. It was then that he drove out to a quiet spot by the Trinity River, on the embankment of the Trinity River, and facing away from him. He shot her at point blank range in the back, and then he shot her again the second time in the shoulder. She falls over almost into the river. And that's when he said he pulled her out of the water and realizes that she wasn't dead. She then grabs a hold of his foot and says, "Why wish?" And he steps on her neck while she is fully conscious until all of the breath is stumped out of her. Investigators go back and evaluate text messages that Shania supposedly sent to him. They started to notice that on the text messages that he claimed Shania sent him, in place of the E, there was the number 3. And by this time, investigators had previewed 2,500 text messages from Shania. So they knew the style in which Shania texts, and she would never use the number 3 as an E. They felt this looked legit on the surface. This didn't seem like it was Shania. And they started to look at his text messages, and he repeatedly replaced the letter E for the number 3. And then when they looked at his phone apps, they noticed that he had a fake SMS app that would send text messages, but it would make them look as if they were legitimate. They were able to verify Shania did not, in fact, send those text messages to Franklin. And he only sent those in order to try to disprove her story and her narrative after he planned to kill her in hopes that this would ultimately clear his name. Franklin Davis was tried and eventually convicted of capital murder aggravated by rape, and he was sentenced to death. This is the case of Shania Gray. Takeaway. The case of Shania Gray, for me, and for you as well, should be a cautionary example of how individuals can exploit online platforms to target victims. Despite Sherry and Dwayne's diligent efforts to review Shania's friends list and ensure her safety, a harmful connection was still made, partly due to gaps in information available to them, such as not being notified that Franklin was out on bond. This situation highlights the importance for parents to meticulously verify and monitor their child's online interaction. Let me say that again. Verify and monitor your child's online interactions. It's important to recognize Shania's courage in this tragedy. She was committed to advocating for herself. She was prepared to testify in open court against her abuser. This demonstrates she had a remarkable resilience through and through. And the outcome reflects that justice, while her life was lost, was ultimately served. Now, as technology continues to advance, we have to regularly review and update our safety practices to protect those at risk more effectively. Now, in our poll, I'll be asking you a question. Where do you think law enforcement dropped the ball in this case? Because for me, I firmly believe that them not telling Shania's parents about Franklin getting out of jail was a heinous mistake. Now, I will go and look up if that is normal practice to make the victim aware of the status of the perpetrator. And I want to say that it is, especially in a case dealing with a minor. You know, they had already moved out of Mesquite, and they did that to give their daughter a fresh start, but also to get out of the environment that Franklin knew her in. And I'm willing to bet that if they knew he was out, they would have done more safety precautions in order to protect their daughter. And I believe they did all they could to try to protect her from perpetrators. I believe most parents do. But I think this is a reminder that we can still do more in order to protect our youth. Before I go, I want to introduce a new segment on Murder in the Black, and we'll be doing this on a bi-weekly basis, at least for now. The name of our segment is True Crime and Current News, and this is where we'll discuss developing true crime cases that are in the news. We'll discuss the when, the where, the how, and then we'll continue to keep up with the case via updates. But this is collaborative. I want you guys to let me know if you find any cases that are developing and you've been itching to send in to me, but you know they don't have an end just yet. Well, this is your time to make sure you email me the case or a news article attached, and we will feature that particular case on a bi-weekly basis. If you would like to do that, make sure you email me. Our email address is murderintheblackpodcast 36 at gmail.com. Again, that's murderintheblackpodcast 36@gmail.com. And don't worry, just in case you're driving or you're busy and you can't jot that down, all of our information is included in our summary notes on this episode or any other episodes you wish to enjoy. Also, you can catch our email address on our social media platforms, which are Facebook and Instagram. Let's jump into the true crime case that's currently developing. Now, if you've been living under a rock or perhaps you've just been busy working, there's a case that has been going viral for the entire month of September, and it has to do with a singer named David. David spells his name differently. He's a musician. They like to keep things very interesting. In case you want to go look up this case for yourself or follow it, he spells his name D, the number 4, the letter V and D after. So I want to talk about the facts of this case, and then we'll get into the theories of You might be saying, Steph, I've never heard about David. David is a Gen Z pop musician. His real name is David Anthony Burke. David's songs have gone viral on TikTok several times. If you like TikTok, you more than likely heard one of David's songs, and he has a massive following. David got his start in gaming and then transitioned to be a YouTube creator before eventually rising to fame as a musician. He became well known after releasing the 2022 song Romantic Homicide and Here With Me. As I said, both songs went viral on TikTok. He eventually released his debut album in 2025 called Withered and began his world tour in April of 2025. However, David made headlines in September after he was identified as the owner of an impounded Tesla where human remains were found. The body later was identified as Celeste Rivas. According to the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner, confirmed to people that the date of Celeste Rivas's death was September 8th, 2025. And the cause of her death has yet to be determined because the state of decomposition that the body was found in. David has yet to publicly comment on the ordeal. However, he did postpone his tour and is currently cooperating with authorities. That pretty much is basic facts of this case. But you should know that Celeste Rivas was 15 years old, and she was reported missing in 2024 by her parents. The fact that one underage girl was found in his Tesla is concerning, and she also had been missing for quite some time. Now, there have been reports that Celeste ran away from her home several different times. It was something she routinely did. The LAPD has yet to say if David and Celeste had a relationship, and they have yet to say that he is a suspect in the case. So, initial reports said that the LAPD ruled this as a homicide, and now they're just saying this is under investigation. I want to put emphasis that this is the facts of the case. Public opinion is another situation because the true crime sleuths have been able to come up with several different theories that I want to talk about. Now, Celeste ultimately was identified through a tattoo on her right index finger that said, shh. SHHH. Fans were able to identify a picture in which David had the exact same tattoo. So, coincidence? Maybe not. Now, resurfaced communication alleged online messages from a few years ago prior between David and a user named Celeste have resurfaced, and rumors about their relationships have circulated in an online community. And that online community was Discord. There have been several videos produced in which she is in conversation with him. He's sitting next to her. And she said, wouldn't it be inappropriate that you rape children? And then the video goes mute for several seconds. He gets back on and says, no, 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 that's not true. Delete it all. Delete it all. Interesting, right? Now, there's also a song called Celeste that has since released after the body of Celeste Rivas was found in his Tesla, and he has mentioned Celeste's name in several different songs. There have been other rumors that he groomed Celeste because Celeste was 13 years old when she first met David, and also Celeste's mother said that she knew Celeste had a boyfriend named David. So everything is pointing to it being David who is the musician. And then when you see the videos of them together, as well as the Discord messages between the two, you start to put two and two together that more than likely they had some type of relationship. And it was inappropriate because at the time, David was 19 when she was 13. So could there have been grooming? If that did exist, there was obvious grooming. There are messages dating back to 2024 on one of David's either Instagram pictures or maybe it was a YouTube video that he uploaded that said, I wonder when he's going to get caught by the LAPD for being in a relationship with a 13-year-old. Disgusting. They believe that at some point the relationship became bad and he allegedly killed her and placed her in this Tesla. And he also has a lot of damning lyrics. If you look up who David is as a musician and just some of his music, he seems to be very dark in nature. He talks about a lot of death and loving a woman so much that he kills her. And it's just a lot of dark imagery around his music. Now, that by its very nature doesn't quantify as evidence, but all of the other rumors attach the matching tattoos, the alleged grooming relationship, her mother knowing that she was in a relationship with David, and it just so happens to be that his name is David. It just seems very odd. The fact that she had been running away for quite some time, eventually running away in 2024, and then her body being discovered the next year, it makes you wonder how long was she dead? And how much did her parents and her family know about her relationship? It's even alleged that David paid her friends to be quiet about their relationship and not say anything. David's house that he had in LA was raided, and police officers took out various evidence. But authorities haven't revealed what they found in his home. I wanted to give you the basics as well as some of the theories surrounding the case and the rumors. But what do you think? Where do you think this will go? Is it just true crime sleuths making more of a situation, or have they done a lot of the work that police are now just finding out about? Let me know what you think about this. Until next time, friends, this is Murder in the Black.